Selamat siang. Welcome back to another Bali COVID-19 update. My name is Bruce, and this is November 21st, 2021, and it is a sunny and windy day today here in Sigaraja. New positive cases is 7, and that is the 5th day below 10, and the 7-day average for deaths is rounded down to 0. Yes, 0. And that is, well, it's been a long time coming, is 400, and deaths are down to 11. Wow, just more and more good news. And total number of individuals tested in Indonesia for yesterday, 186,231 with a 0.21% positivity rate. Oh, and what about in Bali for testing? Over the last 7 days, Bali tested 46,781 individuals, and the 7-day positivity rate, the 7-day average, is 0.12. First dose, 3,437,958, 77% of the population. And second dose, 3 million, okay, we're up to 3 million, 3,920, 67.2% of the population. And remember, that is the total population, including children. And I've been wondering, what is the percentage of children in Bali? Well, it's apparently approximately 17% under the age of 12. And remember, those kids are going to be vaccinated sometime early next year. Yesterday, 139 additional doses were administered, not that many. That number is down. And what about the numbers for Bali? 3 new positive cases, yes, just 3. 11 recoveries and 0 deaths. Okay, and active cases in Bali, 153. So the numbers are looking great here. Great in Bali and really good in Indonesia, but don't forget, we still have issues with getting the rest of the country vaccinated because we're somewhere in the low 40%. And what about the Christmas holiday? What's going to happen there with PPKM? Let's take a look at that. So a lot of talk about the holidays. It's been going on now for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we have all regions with PPKM level 3 status during Christmas and New Year's holidays. So Coordinating Minister for Human Development and Culture, Pak Muhadir Effendi, said that all regions will implement the 3rd level of community restrictions, PPKM, during Christmas and New Year's. This policy is being undertaken in order to try to ward off a spike and the 3rd wave. The decision for this policy was taken through a coordinating meeting at the ministerial level to anticipate the potential for an increase in COVID-19 cases on the Nataru holiday. Nataru, I like saying Nataru. The minister emphasized that this is being undertaken to restrict mobility of people during the holiday period. And I'm going to talk about some restrictions in detail in the next segment. And so for quite a while I've been talking about what's going to happen with the holiday season, and the government had already imposed restrictions on people taking holidays, people that work for the government. Well, government to impose curbs on year-end holidays. The threat of a 3rd wave of COVID-19 looming ahead at the year-end festivities, the government is gearing up to take another crack at preventing a holiday-fueled surge. How are they going to do this? They're going to impose the second most severe restrictions. That is, everybody, every region, everywhere in Indonesia will be moving to level 3 for a 1-week period from December 24th until January 2nd. The details are not yet available, as usual, but they will be announced within the next week. Under the planned regulation, activities synonymous with New Year's festivities, such as fireworks, parades, and events that would attract large crowds, will be completely prohibited. Religious services, including Christmas services, according to Mahajir, the minister, would also return to level 3 restrictions, which allows houses of worship to operate at half capacity. Level 3 restrictions are also going to require malls, hotels, restaurants, and supermarkets to open at half capacity, while public parks and facilities and other places that attract large crowds will be instructed to close. Is that going to include the beaches again? I don't know. That is going to be controversial. According to Jakarta Post's favorite epidemiologist, Iki Budiman from Griffith University, he said that taking into account the data and various indicators on the spread of COVID-19 in each region, imposing a uniform level of restrictions across the country for the coming year-end holidays is not necessarily the right thing to do. He said some areas may need more restrictions than others, and the government should instead focus on increasing PCR testing nationwide and making it more accessible to the public, which it's not at this point. He said that without strict coronavirus surveillance, it's going to be difficult to adopt mitigation measures so that a third wave of infections will become inevitable. And he said whether it's level 3 or level 4 in terms of the restrictions, the essence should be the 3 T's: testing, tracing, and treatment, and vaccination. He said if the government goes with level 3 restrictions but testing and tracing are lagging, it is not going to work. Now that we have the new cases down in the hundreds, well, around 400 now regularly, and deaths are well below 100 a day, the government has put vaccination again in the forefront of its third wave prevention strategies, aiming to have the entire adult population getting the first dose by the end of the year, and planning on administering booster shots next year. But mobility is going to be a key issue during the holiday period. And so we're just going to have to wait and see how that works out. What about vaccines and vaccinations? Children must get complete basic immunization before COVID vaccination. Health Ministry spokesperson Siti Nadia Tarmizi, who I've talked about many times, has advised parents to complete the basic immunization for children aged 5 to 11 while waiting for the launch of COVID-19 vaccinations for children coming sometime early next year. Ibu Tarmizi said many children have not completed routine immunizations such as for measles, polio, and hepatitis, which needs to be administered every year. And I've discussed this before. The BPOM, the National Agency of Drug and Food Controls, already given its okay to use the Sinovac vaccine for children aged 6 to 11, and that will help increase vaccination coverage in Indonesia by adding somewhere around 26 to 27 million children. Around 58 to 59 million additional doses will be required, and they have not been allocated at this point. However, the government has ordered additional doses, and the purchase has been approved by the vaccine manufacturer. Additional doses are expected to be delivered in early 2022, and vaccinations are expected to begin in late January or February. Somewhere there was an article that said children are going to be vaccinated at school. So I'm still looking for a link to that. And some more on vaccines and vaccinations. Pak Luhut, the Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment. Wow, can you hear this noise in the back? This wind, it is intense. I don't know if this is even going to work, this recording. I may just be wasting my time here. But you get an idea. If you're missing Bali, yeah, here's Bali in November, the rainy season, this is what it's like. So Pak Luhut said that United States-based pharmaceutical companies will invest in a number of industries in Indonesia, particularly related to the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Pak Luhut said he has lobbied Merck and Pfizer, and that it turns out that they want to enter Indonesia. He said at a webinar this past Wednesday, he said Pfizer admitted that it thus far faced difficulties to invest in Indonesia, but he said Pak Budi, that's the health minister, and I talked to them to invest here, and we agreed a number of Pfizer technology will enter Indonesia. Pak Luhut said he hopes that next year Pfizer will develop a number of industries domestically. And Pak Luhut has emphasized a number of times that Indonesia wants to become a producer, not just an importer of medicines. And that's going to be particularly important in the future when the next pandemic comes. So the government's worried about what's going to happen with another wave. And so they're looking at places where we're starting to get some spikes. And these spikes are going to affect a lot of things. One of the things people are worried about, and specifically me, are school openings. And so here's a story. Depok halts face-to-face learning as COVID-19 cases rising at schools. The Depok mayor abruptly decided to stop face-to-face schooling as COVID-19 cases are rising in the area. Given the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases during PTMT in several regions, it's necessary to immediately suspend PTMT, according to the Depok mayor. He said the temporary suspension would take effect for 10 days starting from November 19th until the 29th. The situation will continue to be monitored, and until then, students will be back to at-home learning. Boo. What's happening in Thailand? Thai COVID-19 Center to consider cancellation of PCR for ATK test among fully vaccinated tourists from low-risk countries in December. The Center for COVID-19 Situations, CCSA, is planning to consider canceling PCR tests on arrival and replacing them with the ATK tests among fully vaccinated travelers coming from the 63 low-risk countries as proposed by the Tourism Authority of Thailand. The proposal aims to shorten the time for the COVID-19 test results because people are coming in and they're having to wait a day and sometimes longer. According to the governor, the PCR process of each arrival normally takes at least 6 hours, which requires inbound travelers to book and stay in their SHA plus accommodations for at least 1 day in order to get results. And there are reports that some people have to wait over 24 hours and that test result times could vary depending greatly on arrival times and hotel hospital used. So this is a planned proposal. It's not taking effect yet. The approval will be dependent upon the decision of the National Communicable Disease Control Board and the CCSA, chaired by the Prime Minister. Considerations will begin in December. I don't know why they're waiting so long. And official implementation, should it be accepted, could happen in the same month. The TAT, the Tourism Authority of Thailand, wanted to change immediately, but authorities in charge of COVID insisted that it would take time to consider the request and that CCSA needed to review more data before making a final decision. So if this happens, this will be a big one for Thailand because people will be able to come in and almost immediately leave the airport. They get a quick test and boom, they're done if they're negative. And some more on Thailand. Of 100,000 predicted for 2021, Hua Hin has seen 56 tourists. So hopes from the people in the tourist industry that Hua Hin would bring in 100,000 tourists by the end of the year. So far, only 56 have arrived. 56. The Thai Hotel Association explained that the disparity was due to the entry process being complicated, the quarantine, and testing fees being expensive, and the ban on booze and entertainment venues and nightlife activities. So there are different restrictions in different parts of Thailand depending on what code they are and where they fit into the scheme of opening things in Thailand. And, well, Hua Hin apparently is not allowed to serve alcohol and not allowed to have the entertainment business going, which apparently is very popular there. In addition to not many people coming, they're also not staying very long. A total of 112 hotel booking nights were reported for those foreign travelers, suggesting an average stay of just 2 nights. So they're getting there and they're leaving. 16 of those who entered Hua Hin from international destinations traveled to other areas in key tourist designated blue zones, while the remaining 40 have gone elsewhere around the country. And in order to reach the hoped for 100,000 by the end of the year, the town would need to record over 2,300 arrivals until the end of the year, 2,300 arrivals per day. And so not all is sunny in Thailand, unfortunately. The vice president of Thai Hotels Association, who also serves as an advisor to Hua Hin, said that the surge in COVID-19 infections in the province is a deterrent for travelers, as well as a complicated Thailand pass application process and strict entry requirements. And that discourages potential people from coming to Thailand. And the rain is starting to pick up along with wind. I may have to go inside in a minute. Other factors that are obstacles to tourists coming to Hua Hin include the lack of flights coming into Thailand and Hua Hin, and the health measures and restrictions implemented to keep COVID-19 from spreading out of control as tourists return to the town. And according to this article, it's common knowledge that bars and clubs are still operating illegally in many areas, but the covert night out with the risk of legal punishment isn't nearly as enticing. And unlike key blue zone tourist destinations like Phuket and Bangkok, tourists in Hua Hin are not even allowed to have a drink with dinner, as alcohol in restaurants still remains banned. So if you're going to go to Thailand, you need to make sure where you're going and what the restrictions, what the situation is. And that means going to blue zones. And what about Thailand and Bali? This is an interesting one. Foreign tourists are choosing Thailand over Bali, Tourism Association says. So people in the tourist industry here say that international travelers are choosing Thailand over Bali because Thailand is waiving the mandatory quarantine, and that, they say, is the big reason why people are not coming here. Ida Bagus Gede Siddhartha, who heads the Indonesian Hotel and Restaurants Association in Denpasar, PHRI, said foreign tourists have been choosing Thailand over Bali because the country doesn't require quarantine. And this article brought up the mythical 20,000 tourists again. And according to the Indonesian Association of Tourism and Travel, ASITA, bookings don't mean much because they can be canceled at any time. According to the regional head of ASITA, if you want those bookings to be realized, the rules that are implemented must be clear. Okay, and that's one of the big problems here, is that things are about as clear as mud. Travel to Thailand is not always as, okay, moving inside, the rain is coming. So I've moved inside now. And more on Southeast Asia. Philippines to reopen to vaccinated tourists soon. The Philippines will soon welcome back foreign tourists, the government said on Friday, as it prepares for a partial reopening to vaccinated travelers. The government's COVID-19 task force has approved in principle the tourism's department request to permit entry to vaccinated travelers from countries with low infection rates, according to the tourism secretary. According to the statement, the borders will open soon. No date given. Mr. Puyat, the secretary, said allowing tourists from green countries or territories that have the majority of its population vaccinated and with low infection rates will help our recovery efforts. Additionally, she added, the move will likewise aid in bolstering consumer confidence, which is a large contributor to our gross domestic product. And tourism is a major factor in the Philippine economy, accounting for nearly 13% of its gross domestic product in 2019, and that year it attracted more than 8 million visitors. The government has eased virus restrictions in recent weeks as the daily infection rate hovers at the lowest level since the beginning of the year, and the nationwide vaccination rate increases, and it is currently around 1/3 of the population. Philippines have 110 million people, by the way. Quite a bit. And what is Bali doing for the holiday period? Bali will restrict foreign tourist visits during Nataru holidays. Now, as I read this, it says foreign tourists, but I'm thinking what the numbers are talking about, we're not going to have anywhere near that number of tourists if we have any. So are they talking about, when they say foreign tourists, are they including domestic tourists in this? So the Bali provincial government plans to limit the visit of foreign tourists in Bali during Christmas and New Year holiday season. This measure aims to reduce the risk of spreading COVID-19 on the island. The acting head of the Bali Provincial Tourism Office, Jok Bagus Pamayun, said that the Bali provincial government is currently developing a strategy to prevent a surge in forest tourist visits. which we have none. One of them is limiting the number of foreign tourists to a maximum of 1,500 per day during the Christmas and New Year's holiday. So this is what I meant. We're not getting 1,500 a day. Are we going to have 1,500 a day within, the next month? Next 4 weeks? I don't see that. Not only that, but the tightening is also planned to be implemented in 94 tourist attractions in 9 districts. These include spots that have been certified CHSE. Remember CHSE, if you've watched this channel regularly, cleanliness, health, safety, and environmental sustainability. According to the minister, tightening the CHSE in tourism, objects starting from the entrance, officers prepare hand washing equipment, check body temperatures for tourists, and then they're required to fill out the Peduli Lindungi application. So here we are, it's the 21st, and still no tourists, right? Still no planes. And what's happening? Miss Universe from Russia promotes 10 new Bali tours. And so Miss Universe from Russia, when she was here in Bali before, is involved in the promotion of 10 new Bali tours. This tourism program is a government breakthrough so that more areas in Indonesia can become mainstays in the tourism sector. That is a great idea. Get a lot of people moving around the country, seeing some of the great, and reduce some of the pressure on the infrastructure of Bali at the same time. The Russian Miss Universe hopes that with the release of this new book about tourism in Indonesia, Russian citizens will become more interested in visiting various regions in Indonesia. Yeah, get them out of Canggu. And the 10 New Bali book is a whopping 266 pages in the Russian edition. Boy, I'd like to see that. So the government is out trying to drum up some business on the one hand. On the other hand, they're saying, yeah, we really don't care right now what's happening over the next 6 weeks. And some more Bali news. Bali arrivals continue upward climb. So the state-owned management company of the airport reported passenger movements, both inbound and outbound, increasing during the November 1st to November 11th period. Total of 177,723 passengers. That's a lot of business. The stakeholder relations manager for the management company, Taufan Yudhistira, said that during the first 11 days of November, passengers arriving in Bali equaled 90,970 and departing 86,753. An average of 12,000 per day. And he said because of the lack of international flights to and from Bali, the activity is dominated by an overwhelming degree by domestic air travelers. Although apparently there are a lot of people coming in on the B211s. So people really want to get into Bali. And a lot of talk on social media this past week about the actual price of the B211s, which varies greatly. I've heard as low as what comes out to around 3 million rupiah, up to 7.5 with various packages, some including all of the extensions for the total of 6 months, some not, just the entering a part of that whole process of having a B211 visa. And you can find information on those on the internet, on Facebook, in one of the many Facebook groups about Bali. Most of the passengers arriving in Bali came from Jakarta, Surabaya, of course, and Makassar, interestingly enough. Now, when they're coming from Makassar, they could be coming from anywhere, because when I used to live and work in Papua, we had to transit in Makassar. We would fly, either sometimes directly into Makassar and then transfer and get on a Bali flight, or sometimes we had to go from Makassar, sometimes we had to go from Timika to Biak to Ambon to Makassar and then to Bali. Those trips were killers. And so we have people coming in, 90,000. That's not bad over 11 days. And so there are domestic tourists here and people coming in, as I said, on the B211s. And so it'll be interesting to see how things pan out over the next 6 weeks as the holiday season is beginning soon. Here's a very short article on Bali and backpackers. I'm well. European backpackers are enthusiastic to come to Bali. So this statement, this is another article mentioning the 20,000 foreign tourists that the governor talked about a while ago now. And so it mentions that people in the tourism business are disappointed because they heard about 20,000 and they're still zip. But according to the Swedish ambassador to Indonesia, Timor-Leste, in ASEAN, as far as I know, Swedes are very enthusiastic to come to Bali. They are happy that Bali has opened for the international community. I have also said that Indonesia is quite safe and comfortable to visit. And listen to this part and remember about the quality versus quantity tourists. We have done many collaborations, such as in the field of student exchange, Indonesian students study in Sweden and vice versa, exchanges in tourism as well. The news I get is that many Swedish citizens will come to Bali, especially backpackers. And so let's not forget those backpackers. I think a lot of us that are here or that frequently visit here realize that the backpackers are a key component of people that come to visit the island, especially people that stay longer. Now, if anybody has any data on how long people stay according to whether they're backpackers or not, I think you might be able to see how long people stay based on the level of the hotel or the designation of the hotel. So 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. And then I guess the places that I stay are probably no stars. The homestays. Whoa, it is picking up here. I've got to close my windows. It is really windy. And one final note, here is a little short clip of what happened, and this just occurred like that. So within half an hour, we went from sun to drizzles to this. As you can see, we have a storm here. Wow, this just picked up. So you see the change in the video today, how windy it is. It is bad. It is a storm. Okay, so I'm back and wet. And the article concludes with a mention that the Bali provincial government has ensured the entire international community that the number of people vaccinated in Bali is high. 100%, it says, of tourism workers. And that the application of CHSE standards followed in tourism facilities and other public facilities. And more on Bali, a lot on Bali this week. You remember, I think 2 or 3 videos ago, I was talking about the restaurant that burned down. Well, here's an update. Founder of Karma Group issues statement on recent fire at Karma Beach Restaurant. And so the founder and chairman of the Karma Group, John Spence, stated that the Karma Kandara Resort and its facilities are still operating despite the fire. So I guess this is a whole thing. Okay, I wasn't even familiar with this. One of the fine dining restaurants caught on fire and burned down. Despite this, Spence assured everyone that the rest of the property, such as the resort area, the Mare restaurant, the Temple Lounge, the Karma Spa, are still operational and weren't affected by the fire. And also that the hill tram, there's a hill tram and a sea spa that are located near Karma Beach were undamaged and remain operating under safety measures. Wow, so this is a big place. I need to get down to the tourist area sometime. You know, it's been how many years since I've been down there? Well, not with the weather like this, maybe, but sometime when it looks nice. Okay, I had to move undercover. I'm still on the balcony, but undercover now because it's raining and has been raining since this morning. Kind of messed up my walk with Zoe. She wanted to go to the bakery, and so did I. Now here's a local story that's interesting and, well, cautionary as well. USA Caucasians singing in cafes wearing police uniform go viral on social media. So apparently an American in Halloween mode decided to dress up in an official police uniform and was doing some singing in a cafe. And, well, somebody filmed him and put it on social media. Police happened to find it, and according to the head of Denpasar Police Propam, Pak Budianto, they saw the video and immediately checked on it. Police spokesman found the American singer and questioned him, and he clarified and apologized for the matter and said he didn't intend to harass the police because apparently they thought he was harassing them. So people can get sensitive here. You've got to be careful about what you do. So the police, after questioning the American, went to the traders where he said he bought his uniform and found out that there were 9 stores selling police gear. And they had a discussion with the sellers and asked them to be more discerning in who they sell official police uniforms in the future, and that they ask for official police ID before they sell any police equipment. And additionally, they need to record all the data and then make a report to the nearest police station that they just sold some police uniforms. And according to Pak Harun, he said, "We hope that the cooperation of the police attributes traders will be more thorough and selective in selling uniform attributes so that they are not misused by irresponsible parties and harm the police." And that he hoped that this incident wouldn't repeat itself in order for there to be no adverse effects. And they need to be more sensitive about who they sell police gear to. Not a good idea to dress up as a policeman, even if you're not trying to embarrass them, you're just having some fun. You never know how things are going to be taken these days, so a word of caution. And one more segment on what's happening in Bali. Meeting Australian Ambassador Governor Koster confirms COVID-19 cases in Bali sloping, ready to welcome foreign tourists. So the governor had a meeting the other day with the Australian ambassador to Indonesia, and one of the things they discussed was what's happening in Bali and when are Australians going to be coming here. The ambassador commented that she hopes that things improve in Indonesia in terms of the pandemic and that the relationship between Australia and Bali will continue to improve. She said, "I hope 2022 will be better and flights can be opened again because the mobility of citizens in the two countries is very important to maintain the relationship that's been developed so far." And according to the ambassador, the government is being very selective in opening flight. That's the Australian government. But they are being opened. And the governor of Bali, well, he said that the pandemic is in a sloping condition here. That is, it's a downward turn. And he said Bali is receiving help from the central government, especially from the president and the coordinating minister for maritime affairs and investments, Pak Luhut. The governor also commented on the vaccination program, said it's been accelerated here and is the main factor in the decline in COVID-19 cases in Bali. He said herd immunity has been established, whatever herd immunity is. And so I think he's taking the numbers, of course, as the target population and not the total population. And so according to this article, first dose in Bali has reached 108%. Okay, that's 108% of the target. And second dose, 88%. And reportedly, this figure includes residents outside of Bali and foreign citizens. And the governor was a little more upbeat than he's been recently. He said activities have started to normal, but the protests are still tight. That's the health safety protocols. Thank God Balinese are very disciplined. Now, according to a survey from the Ministry of Health, more than 98% of the people still wear masks. And that would be an interesting survey to see. And I hope it's true. As I've said before, if you go to downtown Singaraja, yeah, almost everybody is wearing masks. So yeah, you could say 98%, I suppose. If you're in the kampungs, less. Desas, less. And the government concluded that Bali and Australia have had historically good relations and that Bali is ready to receive tourists. Time for a wrap-up. So what do we have? Restrictions are going to be tightened over the Christmas, New Year holiday period in order to reduce mobility. Whether that's going to work or not, I don't know. I hope so. In the past, the effectiveness of limiting mobility has been, well, spotty. In terms of vaccines, we've still got a long way to go, with somewhere just over 40% being vaccinated around the country. As of Monday, 130.6 million people have received the first dose and 84.5 million have had the second dose. And Thailand, of course, everybody's keeping an eye on Thailand. So they're planning on dumping the PCR and going to a quick test so that people can get into the airport and then get out. Numbers are not as high as they hoped, and part of that is in some areas you can't drink or party, and so people want to drink and party. And the Philippines are going to be opening, so another country in the competition for the tourist numbers. But they're opening at an yet to be determined date, and they're going to be opening like most countries for people that have already been vaccinated and that will test negative and are coming from countries where things are seemingly under control. Even while we have no flights arriving yet, the central government doesn't seem in a big hurry to do away with the quarantine and take care of the visa issues that are generally agreed upon as a main cause for the lack of enthusiasm to coming to Bali. We are getting domestic tourists and foreigners, B211As, and that number seems to be going up based on what I see on social media. People asking, okay, who do I talk to? What agent do I use? How do I get here? A lot of that chatter on social media. But those are people that are coming for longer term. They're not going to come here and pay the money for a few days vacation. The government's continuing to hold meetings with countries around Asia and the world in order to drive up tourism, and so we had reports about Russia, and there's meetings with Australia, meetings with Sweden, and the backpacker issue of course came up, and well, it was interesting to see what was mentioned. The Swedes mentioned backpackers. Maybe that will reach some ears in the government. If you go to some of the iconic tourist spots, Legian, if you watch the monkeys, he was down the other day, boy, and he said it looks like a ghost town. It did look like a ghost town. But he noted that some other areas were picking up a little, and we've got domestic tourists wandering around here, and I saw some posts on Instagram up in Kintamani that caught what I call Coffee Row there, along the ridge. A lot of domestic tourists there, a lot of license plates, Jakarta license plates. And in places like here in Denpasar, life goes on as normal in the non-tourist areas. So people that say that, well, if the tourists aren't here, everybody's going to starve, well, that's not true. That's based on an assumption that everybody is living on tourist money, which they're not. And that Balinese are totally helpless and they can't figure out other ways to make money. It is tough. I've got my own children who are in the tourist industry, and it's hard for them. But Balinese are resourceful, Indonesians are resourceful. They find ways to survive. Do we want to open up as soon as possible? Yes. Do we want what's happening in Europe right now? The news there is really terrible. Austria is locking down and apparently is going to require whole population to be vaccinated starting on February 1st. In Germany, they're calling this a national emergency. And I saw a news report just a little while ago about riots in the Netherlands, I think at Rotterdam, about lockdowns. So we don't want to get in that situation. The government's been very careful about not wanting to move backwards. And so the government's playing it safe. As much as I would like to see tourism get back on track here, I'm not in charge of things. I don't have access to all the data. And I'm just going to wait and see what the government does, which is all any of us can do. Is there any new news on the quarantine being dropped down? No. The governor, like I mentioned in the last video, the governor asked for the quarantine to be dropped down to 1 day like in Thailand, which is actually going to become 0 days, possibly next month. How will the change in the PPKM levels going to level 3 from the 24th of December until January 2nd, how is that going to affect us? Well, not really clear. I've talked already about what that entails in an earlier segment, and you can take a look at that one. And so, yeah, December, don't look like it's going to happen. Don't look like it's going to happen for international tourists, but we are getting the people coming in on the business visas still, and we've got domestic tourists. Will the restrictions on the 24th stop the flow of domestic tourists, which usually show up here to a holiday in Bali? That's not really clear yet. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully not. And I haven't talked at all about the Mandalika superbike thing going on in Lombok. And the president was there, and my son-in-law has been there for a number of days because, as I mentioned before, he's in the motorbike business now that his tourist business is, well, let's say, not functioning at the moment. And so I'm going to talk about that on Wednesday. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And I do 2 videos a week, Wednesday and Sunday. And we'll be waiting to see what's going to happen in the next week as we wrap up November and get ready for December. Comments are always welcome, with the exception of rants about COVID-19. And I welcome the people who send me updates, let me know what's going on in Australia and Thailand and around, and send links. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It cuts down on all the searching that I have to do. Stay safe. Be kind to someone today. You want to get to Bali, hang in there. It is going to happen eventually. See you on Wednesday.